tell me why. I'll put out, these are all more or less spontaneous content, but I put one out that I'm like, oh, I was really thoughtful about this and I feel really good about this one. And then it does fine or sub fine. And then I have a week like last week where I functionally forget and I go on a late night walk on the treadmill and put out like a 1.5 minute video of like, oh, hey, I'm just being consistent, la-di-da this week. And then it gets more views than normal. I don't understand the system for what attracts views and what doesn't, but what do you know? Maybe it was because YouTube knew that was like my 2-year anniversary or something, but that's really funny. So anyway, it is always humbling and it's always a good reminder to put out content that you enjoy, not just content that people want to see. That's a hard balance. I think my balance there is you don't want to sell your soul for results. So it's good to do what people want and what people are looking for and what people need, but you should have limitations to that probably. Obviously, if people want awful things from you, you shouldn't be like, well, they're willing to pay, so I'll take it. Yeah, there's to be on a tangent for a second. So obviously, we have a very sexually depraved world. There's a lot of sexual problems out there. One thing that's interesting to me in that category is just the rise in, it's both legitimate and it's a joke about people being interested in feet, like getting sexual gratification from that. And people joke and are serious about, well, I can just sell pictures of my feet to random people or online and, it's not objectifying me and I can make money off it. And, I think obviously it's not the same as being naked on camera, but it is, I think, extremely close. And my reasoning for that is because if you know the other person on the other end of that is objectifying you and getting sexual gratification from it, and someone who looks at you naked online is getting the same type of sexual gratification, then you're more or less offering the same thing to that person. The difference is just because somebody feels a certain way doesn't mean you are a certain way, right? Just like if you're out walking around in whatever outfit and somebody is turned on by the outfit doesn't mean you're now doing that to them, right? People have accountability. So this is obviously the long-standing discussion of, women dressing a certain way because men are going to be a certain way. And those are separate topics. Modesty is a separate topic. It overlaps, but it's separate from, just because that subgroup of people is going to respond a certain way, you shouldn't do it. Now, there's certain philosophies. If if you're around people that struggle with certain things, you probably shouldn't dress or behave in a way that elicits that. Same if you have friends who struggle with like alcohol, for instance, it's good to not bring it out when they're around. It's the same type of courtesy. However, that doesn't mean everyone all the time should get rid of alcohol because somebody around might have a problem with it and they're choosing to be in a space where they're going to be tempted by that, right? Like if you have an issue with just being turned on by women's bodies and you're going to the beach and the pool all the time, I don't think you have a right to get upset at what they're wearing. Everyone can have their opinions, but that's not now their problem. So, point being, if you know someone is using a picture that you're sending them for sexual gratification, to me, I still think that that's really pushing the line of like pornographic behavior. So, how did we get here in this conversation? I think you should be mindful of what you sell yourself for. Because even if a behavior isn't inherently bad, but people are using it for bad purposes, there's an argument that now becomes bad behavior because you know how it's going to be used. I know not to get into the gun argument too much, but we will. It's the same thing. A gun can be used for self-defense, it can be used for hunting, and it can be used for murdering another person. And if you go to a gun store and you're trying to buy a rifle and you say you're going to use it for hunting, they'll sell you the rifle. If you tell them you're going to use the rifle to murder someone, they're not going to sell you the rifle. And someone might say, you're still selling me a rifle, but now they know what your intent is for that. And that does change the decision to sell. It's also why if, a woman is dressed a certain way and some dude makes a sexual comment about her body, she might get self-conscious about how she looks now and get uncomfortable about it. And that's because somebody said, hey, my, at least mental, at the very least, intent is this. This is how I'm choosing to see you. So then that then can change how she feels present in the space, right? This happens in any type of objectification. It can change if we're having a conversation with someone and then we learn that they're trying to get something out of us, whether it's money, some sort of transaction, or they're trying to manipulate us. We now feel different, even though the interaction seems the same, but now we know what's behind it, and it changes whether it feels gross or not, whether it feels good or not, or inviting or not. So, yeah, to say that every situation on the planet is just right or wrong because of what's happening in terms of black and white, how something looks, it isn't true. I think there are black and white problems, but a lot is nuance. A lot is what is the person's intent. It's why we can be very forgiving of children when they make pretty bad mistakes. A child pouring a glass of milk and knocking the whole glass over and spilling half the jug is annoying, but you understand they're learning. A typical 30-year-old that does that, you might be like, dude, what's wrong? Are you okay? It's abnormal. You should know better than to do that. You'd think they're maybe on something or sleep deprived, or your assumption is something's wrong if you knocked the glass over and then kept pouring the milk out. You wouldn't quite feel the same way with maybe a 2 or 3-year-old. So, yeah, it's we're not quite talking about intent versus impact here, but I do think learning intent and learning where people are with something can then change how you engage in behaviors with them. It can also change your level of empathy with what's going on. If I know someone's story a little bit and I know what they're working through and how they're doing, it changes where we set the bar for expectation. So, yeah, it's I think it's worth reflecting on, and I think the bigger thing to reflect on there is if you know somebody is using you for evil, but you are trying to make the argument that you're not the one doing the evil, that's to me a slippery slope. And it sits very much into a lot of, in my opinion, the horrors of the 20th century, of a lot of people being like, hey, I'm not the one doing it. I'm doing my part to contribute to the problem, but I'm not like actually doing the problem. So, it's not my problem that they're going to use pictures of feet for that. In the same sense that, it's not my problem what the police do with the information that I just gave them, or what that scary person does with the information I just gave them. And, I'm just answering a question. And there is a fine line there, and everyone's got to wrestle through that, of how you become complicit in the evils of the world and how you don't. And I think that's a hard balance. And I think empathy is important. And I feel like this conversation might sound like it's jumping all over the place. It's super connected in my head, but I'm not convinced the threads are all lining up on the receiving end for those listening. So you can let me know if it is or not. But I think it does all pull back into the moral of the story is it's important to change your action and your stance when you are provided with newer information about how you're contributing to a problem or solution. And I'll leave it at that. So, happy Monday, I'll say. And hope that it has been for everyone listening. And that's my sign off. See ya.